Hello and welcome to Methods, Approaches, and Techniques. In this presentation, we will work with the different methods teachers in the past and present have had and have the chance to use in their English as a foreign language classrooms. We will try to awake your curiosity and learn more about the materials we have collected for you. To start, we'll talk about the differences between approaches, methods, and techniques and their definitions. We'll begin with what is an approach. That's a theoretical position and belief about the language, the nature of language learning, psycholinguistic and cognitive process involved, and the applicability of both to pedagogical settings, the successful use of these processes. What is a method or a plan? It is a generalized set of classroom specifications for accomplishing linguistic objectives focusing on the goals of the teaching, learning roles, teachers' roles, role of instructions, and materials. What is a technique? The definition is specific types of exercises, tasks, or activities used in class for the purpose of reaching pedagogical goals. We're going to start with the grammar translation method. The principles of grammar translation method are detailed analysis of the grammar rules to understand and manipulate the morphology and syntax of the foreign language. The mother tongue is maintained as a reference system in the acquisition of the second language. Reading and writing are the primary skills to be developed. Vocabulary selection is based on the reading texts used, and words are taught through bilingual word lists, dictionary study, and memorization. The sentence is the basic unit of teaching and language practice. Accuracy is emphasized. Grammar is taught deductively in an organized and systematic way. Students are taught to translate from one language to another. Having students get the correct answer is considered very important. Students should be conscious of the grammatical rules of the target language. The direct approach. Lessons begin with a dialogue using a modern conversational style in the target language. Material is first presented orally with actions or pictures. The mother tongue is never used. There is no translation. The preferred type of exercise is a series of questions in the target language based on the dialogue or an anecdotal narrative. Questions are answered in the target language. Grammar is taught inductively. Rules are generalized from the practice and experience with the target language. Verbs are used first and systematically conjugated only much later after some oral mastery of the target language. Advanced students read literature for comprehension and pleasure. Literary texts are not analyzed grammatically. The culture associated with the target language is also taught inductively. Culture is considered an important aspect of learning the language. The principles of the direct method are: classroom instruction is conducted in the target language. Grammar is taught inductively. Never explicit grammar rule given. Concrete vocabulary is taught through objects, realia, or pictures, and demonstration. Abstract vocabulary is taught by association of ideas. Speaking and listening skills are taught. Correct pronunciation and grammar are emphasized. Reading and writing in the target language should be taught from the beginning of language instruction and must be developed through practice with speaking. Language is primarily spoken. Students should learn to think in the target language as soon as possible by knowing how to ask questions and answer them. Vocabulary is acquired more naturally using it in complete sentences. Self-correction facilitates language learning. Lessons should contain some conversational activity for students to use in real contexts. Students should be encouraged to speak as much as possible. The audiolingual method, also called the ARMY method. The principles of audiolingual method are: language forms occur most naturally within a context. The habits of students' native language are thought to interfere with students' attempt to master the target language. A contrastive analysis between the student's native language and the target language will reveal where a teacher should expect the most interference. Foreign language is basically a process of mechanical habit formation. It is important to prevent learners from making errors. When they occur, they should be immediately corrected by the teacher. The purpose of language learning is to learn how to use the language to communicate. Particular parts of speech occupy particular slots in sentences. Foreign language learning is basically a process of mechanical habit formation. Positive reinforcement helps students develop correct habits. Students should learn to respond to verbal and nonverbal stimuli. Pattern practice helps students to form habits which enable students to use the patterns. Students should overlearn, that is, learn to answer automatically without stopping to think. The major objective of language teaching should be for students to acquire the structural patterns, then vocabulary. The learning of a foreign language should be the same as acquisition of the native language. The rules necessary to use a target language will be figured out or induced from examples. Speaking is more basic to language than the written form. The natural order of skill acquisition is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Communicative language teaching. The principles of communicative language teaching are: language is a system for the expression of meaning. The primary function of language is for interaction and communication. The structure of language reflects its functional and communicative uses. Whenever possible, authentic language should be introduced. The emphasis is on the process of communication rather than just mastery of language forms. Students should work with language at the discourse level. They must learn about cohesion and coherence. Students use the target language through communicative activities such as games, role plays, and problem-solving tasks. Truly communicative activities have three features in common: information gap, choice, and feedback. Students should be given an opportunity to express their ideas and opinions. Errors are tolerated and seen as a natural outcome of the development of communication skills. Being able to figure out the speaker's or writer's intentions is part of being communicatively competent. The target language is a vehicle for classroom communication, not just the object of study. One function can have many different linguistic forms. The focus of the course is on real language use. A variety of linguistic forms are presented together. Communicative interaction encourages cooperative relationships among students. It gives students the opportunity to work on negotiating meaning. The social context of the communicative event is essential in giving meaning to the utterances. Learning to use language forms appropriately is an important part of communicative competence. In communicating, a speaker has a choice not only about what to say, but also how to say it. The grammar and vocabulary that students learn follow from the function, situational context, and the roles of the interlocutors. Learners need knowledge of forms. meanings, and functions. Students work on the four skills from the beginning. Some of the characteristics of the communicative classroom are: the classroom is devoted primarily to activities that foster acquisition of L2. Learning activities involving practice and drill are assigned as homework. The instructor does not correct speech errors directly. Students are allowed to respond in the target language, their native language, or a mixture of the two. The focus of all learning and speaking activities is on the interchange of a message that the acquirer understands and wishes to transmit. For example, meaningful communication. The students receive comprehensible input in a low anxiety environment and are personally involved in class activities. James J. Asher defines the total physical response, also called TPR method, as one that combines information and skills through the use of the kinesthetic sensory system. This combination of skills allows a student to assimilate information and skills at a rapid rate. As a result, this success leads to a high degree of motivation. The basic tenets are: understanding the spoken language before developing the skills of speaking. Imperatives are the main structures to transfer or communicate information. The student is not forced to speak, but is allowed an individual readiness period and allowed to spontaneously begin to work when the student feels comfortable and confident in understanding and producing the utterances. Step 1. The teacher says the commands as he himself performs the action. Step 2. The teacher says the command as both the teacher and the students then perform the action. Step 3. The teacher says the command, but only students perform the action. Step 4. The teacher tells one student at a time to do commands. Step 5. The roles of teacher and student are reversed. Students give commands to teacher and to other students. Step 6. The teacher and student allow for command expansion or produces new sentences. This methodology, created by Charles Curran, is not based on the usual methods by which languages are taught. Rather, the approach is patterned upon counseling techniques and adapted to the peculiar anxiety and threat as well as the personal and language problems a person encounters in the learning of foreign languages. Consequently, the learner is not thought of as a student but as a client. The native instructors of the language are not considered teachers, but rather are trained in counseling skills adapted to the roles as language counselors. The language counseling relationship begins with the client's linguistic confusion and conflict. The aim of the language counselor's skills is first to communicate an empathy for the client's threatened, inadequate state and to aid him linguistically. Then, slowly, the teacher-counselor strives to enable him to arrive at his own increasingly independent language adequacy. This process is furthered by the language counselor's ability to establish a warm, understanding, and accepting relationship, thus becoming an other language self for the client. The process involves 5 stages of adaptation. Stage number 1, the client is completely dependent on the language instructor. First, he expresses only to the counselor and in English what he wishes to say to the group. Each group member overhears this English exchange, but no other members of the group are involved in the interaction. 2. The counselor then reflects these ideas back to the client in the foreign language in a warm, accepting tone in simple language in phrases of 5 or 6 words. 3. The client turns to the group and presents his ideas in the foreign language. He has a counselor's aid if he mispronounces or hesitates on a word or phrase. This is the client's maximum security stage. Stage number 2. 1. The client turns and begins to speak the foreign language directly to the group. 2. The counselor aids only as the client hesitates or turns for help. These small independent steps are signs of positive confidence and hope. Stage number 3. 1. The client speaks directly to the group in the foreign language. This presumes that the group has now acquired the ability to understand his simple phrases. 2. This presumes the client's greater confidence, independence, and proportionate insight into the relationship of phrases, grammar, and ideas. Translation is given only when a group member desires it. Stage 4. 1. The client is now speaking freely and complexly in the foreign language, presumes group's understanding. 2. The counselor directly intervenes in grammatical error, mispronunciation, or where aid in complex expression is needed. The client is sufficiently secure to take correction. Stage number 5. 1. Same as stage number 4. 2. The counselor intervenes not only to offer correction, but to add idioms and more elegant constructions. 3. At this stage, the client can become counselor to the group in stages 1, 2, and 3.